Well, welcome. I am joined by April Taylor from Sound Living Foundation. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Ms. Latrice.
Okay, let's talk about this May, Mental Health Month. But we know that this is something that we need to focus on every month, all throughout the year. And when you look at the statistics, it says that 1 in 5 Americans suffer from a mental illness. Is that because those numbers going up because it's being diagnosed more, or are more people just starting to have problems when it comes to mental health?
Well, I think there's more going on in the world, so the more that's happening, it affects our mental health more. So there's the pandemic, we all know about that, but then there's shootings. There's just so many things that's going on, and all those things impact so many people so many different ways.
And let's talk about those things that impact. We, like you said, we know about the pandemic, but other things. We're also seeing this problem even more in young people. And that's raising a lot of concerns and red flags. And because then you start talking about the suicide rate going up in young people, and particularly in talking about young African American men. So what's leading to that when it comes to mental illness, mental health issues, and problems with young people?
So I think, and this is just my opinion from being in the field, so as long as I've been in the field, it starts at home. A lot of times we have trauma, we have a lot of things that happen to us at home. We're not listening to our kids, they don't feel understood, or they don't feel heard. So when we don't feel heard at home, then we go out and then we may not feel heard or understood at school, and then those things just get magnified. Then you couple that with what's going on in the world. I think the pandemic was bigger than anybody can think. Like, it has a huge effect on us and our mental health. And I don't even think we've done the numbers on it just to see how much, but I think it's huge. And then if you take young men, young African American men, and you think about how they're looked at in society, are we applauding them? Are we applauding them at school? Are we applauding them at home? And if we're not, then they're going out in the community not feeling supported, not feeling the needs are being met, not being able to express how they feel. And then a lot of times they express how they feel in terms of suicide and things like that. So that's kind of how it happens to me. Well, it starts at home, and that's why I wanted to talk about families, because as a family, if we can catch it at home, if we can listen and understand and encourage, then that's going to help them.
And one of the things too, in talking about part of that, and one of the studies, and this includes families and young people, but parents are talking about how they see social media impact their children when it comes to mental health. And over half of parents in a recent survey said that they feel that social media has had a negative impact, whereas it was good during the pandemic because it gave us that opportunity to stay connected. They feel that now it's kind of hard to pull that back, and it just kind of takes over their lives when it comes to young people.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I can remember being interviewed before the pandemic thinking that, social media didn't have such an impact. It was a positive and that kind of thing. But I've read some research too recently that it has a huge impact. And I think it's what happens on social media. So it's not just social media itself, but it's the way we treat each other. Again, back to the lack of kindness, the lack of understanding, the lack of listening to each other. And so that's magnified on social media. And so that has become a huge problem for our young people. And they use social media to try to build relationships, and it's not the same. Like, we need interaction with people, and we just interacting with social media is not enough.
I think that's such a good point, April, when you talk about that, as people who use social media to build relationships, or they feel that that's where they find their sense of belonging, behind this keyboard, really. And that's not healthy, because we do need that human interaction.
Absolutely. And we need to feel supported. One of the things that with families is we can encourage our family members by being supportive. A lot of times we don't listen, we don't understand, we're not paying attention. But if we just listen to what's going on and we're supportive to them and to what's happening, that's going to make a huge difference. And the sad thing is, and it's a simple thing. It's just simple. People want to be heard, they want to be understood, and when they're heard, they start to heal. So that makes a big difference when they feel heard and understood. And so it's simple. It's so simple, but it's profound, if that makes sense.
It really is, just to listen to people, and like you said, to say you're heard, your voice counts, your thoughts matter, you matter. And that's so important to say to people. What are some of the warning signs that we should look for to say, you know what, I think, this is something more than just like you're just sad, but you need help in about 15, 20 seconds, if you
One
can
of the
tell us
things that I try to remind people of, sadness and having anxiety is very normal for lots of people, but when it extends for more than 2 weeks is when we want to pay attention to it. So I even tell children that if it's happening for longer than 2 weeks, then you want to reach out to your parents, you want to reach out to your doctors, your PCPs, and let them know what's going on. So if it's extending that period of time, then that's when you want to make sure you're paying attention to it.
Okay, some really good advice, because this is something that, of course, is that all families are faced with and have to deal with and are impacted by when it comes to mental health. So, April Taylor from the Sound Living Foundation, thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. I appreciate you always.
All right, well, giving young inner city girls hope and confidence.